I have Amy Stansbury, Editor-in-Chief of the Austin Common, with us today. I'm the Community Relations Director for League of Women Voters Austin area. I'm Jennifer Delk. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about engaging with City Council. This stemmed from the long list of propositions that are going to show up on your ballot, and just, I have a vested interest in government at the local level. So let's forge ahead. So the League of Women Voters, a little bit about us. We are open to everyone. We're a nonpartisan political organization, and we encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. You're probably well aware of the fact that we do voter registration services and get out the vote activities. I'm sure that many of you are eagerly awaiting our voters guide that's about to come out. We do candidate forums, high school voter education, policy presentations. For those of you who haven't checked out our calendar, you should. And you guys are here today for our civics education program. And I'll let Amy talk a little bit about what the Austin Common does.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Amy Stansbury. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm the editor-in-chief of the Austin Common. We're a local news source here in Austin, pretty heavily dedicated to civic education. Each week we focus on explaining the news, especially if you're someone who's, not always at City Hall and but want to get more involved and want to learn how. So we try and explain it, break it down, and then share with you clear steps for how you can get more involved in our local community. And I just put in there, I can put a few things in the chat as well, but we have a weekly newsletter that has a lot of that information, as well as events that are going on in the community, city council meetings, public engagement opportunities with the city. We also have a podcast and radio show on 91.7 FM called the Austin Common Radio Hour. And on Instagram, you can find us there. That's where we are also posting our election coverage. We have quite a lot of very easy to read, shareable election guides to get you started on your research. I think I might have one more slide, Jennifer, too. Let's see. Yeah, so this is that link. Again, I can post it in the chat. We have available in both English and Spanish these kind of Instagram friendly election guides with just basic information about what's on the ballot, who's endorsing each of these propositions, to start to give you some information to learn a little more. And again, break it all down for you.
Cool. So how did we all get to City Council? Well, let's start off with the city charter. So we have a charter, defines the organization, powers, functions, and essential procedures of city government. And the charter amendments can be held every 2 years via election. And there is a charter revision committee that's created to look at issues that will potentially be placed on the ballot. So we'll get to it later as far as how specific propositions got to the ballot, but this is kind of the rule book for the city of Austin.
Yeah, and I'll add, this is kind of why you're seeing a whole bunch of propositions be on the ballot at once, because like Jennifer mentioned, you can only have these charter amended elections every 2 years. So if one's going to get up there, there's a lot of motivation for some others that are in the works to all be there at once, because you have to wait 2 more years.
So we have a council manager government. That means that day-to-day operations of the city are run by the city manager, and legislative functions are handled by the city council. And so this is our current government structure. And you can find this on the City of Austin website, and there's links in our link sheet.
And I'll add that that's often described as kind of like a CEO and board relationship. So if you imagine the city manager is like the CEO, the executive officer who's like running the day-to-day of the company, and city council is the board, and they're the ones that are setting the high priority values and policy direction and kind of telling the city manager what to do. If you follow a lot of city council meetings, you'll notice that pretty much every ordinance, resolution, whatever it is that city council passes starts with the words directs the city manager to, and that's the reason, because it's the city manager who's responsible for all of the city staff and making it actually happen.
City council districts. So we all live within a district in Austin. And back in 2012 was when we proposed to have 10 single member districts. So basically we have one city council member per district. And then each year following the census, there is a Citizens Redistricting Commission that adjusts the boundary lines of the 10 single member districts. So it would be in this upcoming year that we'd start looking at redrawing the districts for city council.
And I'll add here, you know, I tend to get a lot of questions like, do we have a problem with gerrymandering in Austin, like you see in the national news? And as Jennifer mentioned, this is an independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. So we as a city have really tried to not have that happen. Our districts are pretty much regional in focus. Also, our city council members don't run as Democrats or Republicans, and the commission is made up of independent people. There's this very, there's a long process for picking who those people are and making sure that they are representative of the community and not tied to a special interest. So our, you know, for the most part, our city council districts don't really suffer from some of that national conversation around gerrymandering. And I see Carol just asked if the Redistricting Commission has been announced yet. I believe it just was, but I'm not positive. Jennifer, do you know?
Yeah, I want to say that it was recently announced, but I know that they took solicitations from members back in September. So
yeah, I think they just announced it is my best understanding. So they're going to start their work soon, and they will have public input sessions. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Is they'll hold those in every single council district, so you'll be able to be engaged in that process.
So as we've mentioned in past sessions, who represents you is tied to where you live. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. This is our orange voting cord, and right here we have, you know, the city district is on there, and it matches up to your actual little box. So we wanted to run through a few of the positions that are part of our city government. So we have the mayor, and they're the head of city government ceremonially. They're technically a member of city council, and they're required to preside at all meetings. They're considered to be the 11th member on city council. The mayor is allowed to vote on all matters that come before the council, but has no veto powers. Mayor has a 4-year term, and the elections are during even numbered years. And then the qualifications are that they be a 12-month resident of Texas and a 6-month resident of Austin before the filing deadlines. So the reason why we bring this up is because there have been some proposed changes to the position of mayor and when the elections are supposed to happen.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to this. We have a what's known as a council manager form of government. It's also called a weak mayor form of government right now. As you know, there are proposals out there on the upcoming May election to change that. But the way it works now, and the reason it's called that, is because the mayor really just is another member of city council. They kind of help run the meetings, but they don't have a lot of additional formal powers beyond just the fact that they are elected by everyone in the city. So they tend to get more media attention, and they're able to kind of drive the conversation a bit more than a regular city council member, but they don't have a lot of extra powers.
So city council, they oversee and decide on things like the city budget, local taxes, amendments of laws, creations of ordinances of policies. They currently meet every Thursday as their standing meeting. They do have additional meetings that they are running as well. We currently have 10 members who serve 4-year terms. Elections are during even numbered years, and they stagger their terms so that way we aren't voting for an entire council in one go. We also have a mayor pro-tem, and they're appointed by the council to act as mayor if they are absent or disabled. The qualifications for these is that you have to be a 12-month resident of Texas and a 6-month resident of your council district before the filing deadline. And there are rules for the mayor and for council members with regards to maintaining their residence within their districts or in the city. And then here is the city manager. They're responsible for executing the laws and administering the government of the city. They can appoint or remove any officer or employee of the city. They prepare the annual budget and they're responsible for its administration after adoption. They report on financial activities. They're not elected. They are appointed by City Council. They do not have a term length, and they can be removed at will and pleasure of the council by a majority vote of the entire membership of the council. So as far as qualifications go, they're chosen solely on their abilities, training, etc., and they must reside in the city while in office. So this one is not voted in, and it's selected by the council as a whole.
And I'll just add here, obviously, this is what's happening, the big debate that's happening right now in our upcoming election. I know that's not the focus for today, but I believe it's Prop F that's really focusing on is asking Austin voters if we should basically eliminate the city manager position and replace them with the mayor, basically an elected mayor. The city manager, just for additional context about what they do now and how they've come up in the news, I just want to emphasize that they are in charge of preparing the annual budget. That's probably their biggest power or public facing role. Now it's city council that ultimately approves it. But what happens is the city manager makes the first draft. Basically, there's a lot of just legwork that goes into preparing a budget. It's hundreds of pages long for the city. And then city council is able to take it, cut it apart, vote on whatever they want. And then they basically hand it back to the city manager to execute throughout the course of the year, right? To spend the money they have said the way they should spend it. And then the other big power that the city manager has, that's come up a lot in the news lately, is they're able to basically hire and fire department heads. So that was a big issue there. This summer, there was debate about the police chief. It's the city manager who is able to hire, fire, demote, those leadership positions, not city council. But as Jennifer mentioned, city council is able to fire the city manager.
So what we wanted to go over a bit is, how do we get to know our city leadership, and how can you move forward with having a conversation with them, develop a working relationship. Signing up for their office mailing lists. I am signed up for probably half of city council and follow them on social media. Find a trusted news source. I personally follow the Austin Common. Austin Common has a lot of great interviews with city council staff. Revisit the voters guides and candidate forums. The lead has put out voters guides and hosted candidate forums, and you can find the footage of what people promised in their platforms, or how they answered their questions in the past, and you can follow up on that.
And I'll add on to this. I think for the following, the single biggest thing you can do, especially if you're new to this world, is follow your elected official on social media. I think that's the easiest thing. It takes a second. Most of our local elected officials are really active. Mayor Steve Adler has been going live on Facebook, I think every day now since the COVID started, or nearly every day. I know that council member Kassar does some Instagram live videos pretty regularly. Natasha Harper Madison from District 1 does Facebook live things where she'll bring on guests, even, community leaders to talk. Pretty much almost all of them have something like that. And participating in one of those online events is a great way to actually get to meet your city council member, because there's usually not that many people attending them. And so it's a great way for you to just ask your questions, start to get to know them and understand their personality. And also when they're posting, a lot of them will share in advance of a big upcoming vote, this is my opinions on this, this is my thought on this. And so you're able to understand a little bit more about them and the way they work. And I'll also just mention that as far as city council meetings go, one thing that we try and do at the Austin Common is every Wednesday before a city council meeting, we do Instagram post highlighting some of the top issues that are going to be voted on, and try and explain what they are. Because if you ever have looked at a city council agenda list, sometimes the way they're written is so bureaucratic and confusing, it can make your head spin. So we try and break that down a bit. So I'd recommend following us on Instagram for that. And a few other news sources that I find really heavily cover city council meetings. The Austin Monitor is another great one. If you're really like into the wonky, nerdy stuff, I would say they're the ones who are at like every small meeting that city council has, and they'll write a summary of it. So that's another recommendation if you're trying to start to get engaged in this world.
Exactly. So for those of you who have gone past the social media and you're willing to dig deep, you can head over to the Austin, Texas government page. That'll get you access to, finding out who your district is, heading towards the city council message board, getting information on meetings, and we'll go into some of that a little further soon. So it's really important, because this is right in your backyard, to use your voice and contact your representative by phone. That's the best one. Get a hold of somebody in their office, letter, or email. It's your opportunity to state your opinion on something and educate them on issues, because they can't know every single square inch of their district. So the constituents are their eyes and ears of what's going on. So tips for contacting your rep. It's important to let them know who you are and the area you live in, frequently starting off with like, hi, my name is Jen Delk. I'm a resident of, District 10, and I, have a concern, or, I just wanted to say thank you for how you acted during, the snowpocalypse. But like, discuss one topic and ask them to take a specific action, or, really importantly, say thank you when you can. Keep your message short and simple. And just know that frequently you will get a response, or your email will be read by somebody who is a staffer, just because of the sheer volume of like messages that come through during the day.
And I'll add some tips that I like to do when contacting an elected official. Is I almost always email them. And then as soon as I press send on that email, I go ahead and call their office and just say, hi, just wanted to let you know, my name's Amy. I just sent you an email. It's about XYZ. I think it's important. And this is kind of what I want back. Like sometimes you're sending an email and you don't really want a response. You're just kind of, maybe it's the day before a big vote and you're really just trying to make sure they see it. You don't necessarily need a response. Or sometimes you might be raising an issue, like I see a problem in my neighborhood and I want the council member to respond back. So you should be very clear about what you're looking for, right? Like, please respond back. I'm looking for help on this. And then when you call them, you can just let them know. And if you don't receive an answer in a week, call them back again. There's no, as long as you're polite and courteous, there's absolutely no problem with like calling them multiple times. They're busy, they get a lot of emails. But I can say that from interviewing and speaking with council staffers, like they really read them. I know there's this fear of, am I wasting my time? Is my email going to a black box? They really read them, even if they're not able to answer them. And commonly what council staff will do, especially if it's something in advance of a big vote, is they'll go through and tally and let that council member know, hey, we got 100 emails today asking you to vote yes on this or no on this. And they might even pull one or two of their favorite emails, the staff, and hand them to the council member and say, you should read this. So that's another way that just so you kind of have a little bit of an idea behind the curtain, the way it works. And kind of tied to that, I always recommend that folks tell a personal story. If that is the kind of email that will get pulled from the pile and given to the council member. If you have they're able to do the research and things like that, and you can send them links or whatever, but what they really want from a constituent is to know how a policy will impact your life. They want that personal story. That's what you're able to provide to them. Even if you're not an expert on the issue, you're an expert on your own life, right? Like, your own life experience and how something might impact you. So lead with that. That's what's, I think, most interesting and compelling for the council member. There's my thoughts there, I forgot.
Okay, so more ways to engage. Attending live meetings. Well, right now during the pandemic, we've moved online, which, is a little more convenient because you can kind of watch ATXN, like, you watch any TV in the background. So you can attend live meetings, you can watch the past meetings all by going to the city website. You can check out the city council message board, which is very much like kind of a public version of Slack, where you can take a look at what's going on, who's proposing what measures. The other thing that you can do is sign up to speak at a meeting and provide testimony, or you can join a board or commission.
And I'll add on to here, the council message board, I think, is something that is not as well known in town, but it's so helpful. It really gives you a bit of a behind the scenes look as to what they're talking about. I'm gonna put the link into it there. It's austincouncilforum.org. And you can literally see, especially in advance of a meeting, council members will just post their thoughts on an upcoming vote and say, here's where I'm at with this. Here's some amendments I propose that I'm gonna throw up there during the meeting. So the council forum is a great place if you're really getting in the weeds on something or you're trying to track an issue. You can see a little bit more of their honest thoughts on something. It's a way for the council members to communicate in a semi-public space because there are rules. Council members are not allowed to just like meet in a big group outside of a council meeting and discuss things together. That breaks our Open Meetings Act laws here in Texas. So what they are able to do though is post on this public forum information. So they're still able to communicate with each other in this way. So it's a great resource.
Yeah, and frequently you can find things that are a little closer to plain language. You can kind of see where you might have had, that personal story from, a constituent evolve into something that, might eventually become some more legally type language as it, hits say like a proposition or goes towards a ballot. So
yeah. And just some other thoughts on council meetings themselves. Just some warning in case you've never been to one or watched one, they can be very long. So like Jennifer mentioned, that is one of the benefits of them being digital is that you can be in the comfort of your own home while you're waiting for the issue that you're interested in to come up. They usually start at 10 in the morning and last like all day long. And generally the juicier topics happen late afternoon, early evening, when people are getting out of work and then are able to talk about it more. That's changed slightly because of COVID with virtual, but that's generally like they pull the most exciting topics till later in the day so people can show up at City Hall to talk about them. And just something to be aware of since we're still not having in-person meetings, you have to sign up. I believe it's the Wednesday before the council meeting by noon is their new deadline. And so there's a place on the city's website where you're able to sign up to speak. You can say which agenda item you want to speak on, but you do have to meet that deadline. You do have to sign up in advance online. When it's in-person meetings, there are little kiosks that are physically in City Hall that allow you to just show up on the day of the council meeting. But because they have to schedule things and give you a phone number to call in on, that process has changed a little. So you do have to register in advance.
Yeah, and we've included some links on like how to access, how to sign up or the procedures for city council meetings. Yeah, those will all be in the resource sheet. So a little more on boards and commissions.
Yeah, so this is another great way for people to get involved if you're kind of ready to take the next step. So say you're someone that is passionate about a particular issue. You've maybe been to a few council meetings at this point. Maybe you have even emailed or called your council member a few times advocating for the issue it is that you care about. And you're starting to wonder, all right, I'm ready for the next level. Like I'm ready to do something more. Serving on a city board or commission is a great way to do it. We have like 70 or something crazy city boards or commissions on every topic you can imagine. We have one on food access. We have one on bikes and sidewalks and transportation and women's issues. We have ones about the environment and parks, animals. I mean, literally any topic that you're interested in, chances are we have a board or commission dedicated to it. And basically boards and commissions are just citizen or resident groups. Everyone who serves on a board or commission is just a volunteer. And the way they work is every council member and the mayor appoint and pick one person, usually who lives in their district, but doesn't have to be the case, to serve on this board or commission. And most of them meet about once a month. And they basically discuss issues in Austin related to the topic that they're dedicated or tasked with. And I like to think of them as like an advisory body to city council. So if you're serving on a board or commission, say you're on the food policy board, you're in the weeds about food, right? You're passionate about food, you know everything about it. City council can't be hyper knowledgeable about every issue all at once. And so they rely on their boards and commissions to say, hey, there's an issue happening in the community and we feel like you all need to address it. And oftentimes boards and commissions will even write draft proposals or ordinances and then recommend them to city council and say, we think you should vote yes on this. And oftentimes city council really does listen to the boards and commissions. They're not just like something that's cast aside. It's not, they don't listen to them 100% of the time. They're not required to listen to their advice, but they often listen to their advice because they're appointing people that, they get to pick who serves on those boards and commissions. And as far as how you might get engaged with them, there's a lot of seats on boards and commissions. Like I mentioned, they're big. And oftentimes the same people kind of cycle through them. And sometimes there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for more people to get engaged in this process. It can feel a little behind the scenes, which I think is one of the problems of why you don't see more engagement there. And it's definitely a time commitment. But if you're able to set aside the time, I highly recommend them. I'll just say a few steps or advice I would have if you're interested. Again, it might be on the resource sheet. I can put a link here, but on the city's website, there's a list of all the boards and commissions. So I would recommend going to the city's website, looking at that list and seeing if any of the topic areas jump out at you, right? Like which board or commission might you be most interested in joining? And then you can actually click on it and check out kind of that board or commission's website. You can see they have a roster of members. So you can see if you know anyone that serves already. And importantly, if they have any open seats, it'll say vacant, or it'll also say when that board or commission member's seat is expiring. So you might know, oh, their position, they're expiring in a year. Maybe now's a good time for me to start to introduce myself and get engaged. I would definitely recommend attending a board or commission meeting before applying, so you get a vibe of what is it like, what kind of things are they talking about. You can even reach out to a sitting board or commission member. Their email addresses are all there, just to pick their brain a bit of like, what was it like for you to serve? What's the time commitment? Any advice you might have. And then what you can do is apply. And so there's an application form right on the city's website. But the biggest tip I have is you can't just fill out the application form and expect to be picked. You've got to fill out the form and then contact your city council member and let them know that you've just applied, because a lot of applications come through there. If things get lost in the shuffle, you really want to contact your city council member and say, hey, this is me. This is a little bit about me. I'm really interested in this. And oftentimes what they'll do is set up a meeting with you so they can get to know you a little bit better, make sure you align with their values, and go from there. And so if this is something you want, even if you don't see an open seat on a board or commission, I would reach out and apply anyway, because seats are constantly in flux. People change jobs, people move, people's terms expire, and city council members sometimes want to fill those positions fast. So you want to be on their radar already. And if you've already filled out an application and reached out to their office, then they know, oh yeah, Amy said she was interested in serving on that. Maybe we should reach back out to her.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll find out via social media that they're looking for people. I've gotten a couple of mailing list pings saying that, they're starting to look for people on boards and commissions. So that's another way to find out about vacancies, is if you're already plugged in with your city council member. So now we're back to the good stuff. How did we get to these propositions? So there's two ways there's a city council sponsor or there is an initiative position. So as far as the city council sponsor goes, that's city council can propose amendments to the city charter, and that has to happen during the correct election cycle. And currently Proposition C is the only one that got on the ballot via city council sponsorship.
Yes, and that's the one that's about police oversight, and it was proposed and led by Councilmember Greg Casar's office, just for some context there.
So the other way, and how most things get on the ballot, is via an initiative petition. The city charter allows for citizen-initiated legislation, and this is basically what a lot of you have kind of heard rumbles about. It's the petition, where any group can put together some, an amendment and petition to have it put on the ballot. So there is a rule where it has to be either 5% of the number of qualified voters in the municipality or 20,000, whichever number is smaller.
And this is a big issue. I'll just get, to provide a little news context to this. 20,000 sounds like a lot of signatures, but it's not that hard of a barrier, actually. So you see a lot of citizen petitions come up. I would say that they're not an infrequent part of Austin's life. You can really expect these to be happening all the time. We live in a big city, and it's definitely, you have to work towards it, but it's not an impossible number. And so because of that, you see, you should expect to see citizen petitions come up frequently.
And so that brings us towards the end. A couple of quick reminders from the league side is that you can catch our previous sessions online on our YouTube. And you probably, if you want to prepare for getting yourself to the voting booth, you want to scroll back to our, how to get help at our polling place or researching your ballot and casting your vote. Those will get you ready. Also follow the Austin Common, because they've got some great tips and reminders to get ready for the voting booth. The voter's guide, I know you guys are excited about that. I will tell you now that it will only be available in digital format via Vote 411 or via our website, and it should be available starting on Friday, fingers crossed. We should have translations available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese trickling onto the website as they become available. And then Vote 411, all that's, if you haven't used it, it is a great resource to be able to go ahead and type in and get a personal ballot in your language of choice. So here's the website. If you haven't been there before, please check it out. And then polling locations and times. Early voting is going to start Monday, April 19th. So you still have some time to research your ballot, check out all those propositions. Election day is on May 1st, that's a Saturday, and polls should be open from 7 to 7. Sunday, there is a time change, so please check out your respective county websites for locations and times. And then the legislature is in session currently, the Texas Leg. So if you are interested in staying top of the issues, the League of Women Voters Texas has text alerts that you can sign up for, or you can sign up to their mailing list. So that is all I had for today. Amy, what would you like to sign off with?
I just wanted to kind of give a small amount of additional information about speaking at city council meetings, because I know this is a point of anxiety for some folks. It can feel really scary to get up there and speak. I just dropped in a video that I made with Hal Works and Jordan Shade to civic enthusiasts and artists in town about a year ago, that goes over the basics of how to testify at a city council meeting. And advice that I like to share there is just when you are speaking at a city council meeting, you're likely going to get either 3 minutes to speak or 1 minute to speak, depending on time. Basically, if there's a lot of people speaking on an issue, city council will likely cut you down to 1. And so you really want to just prepare it totally in advance. Unless you're a very great public speaker, oftentimes the biggest mistake I see people make is they spend 30 seconds introducing themselves and then they don't have nearly enough time to make their argument. So just get in there right away. Hi, I'm Amy. I live in District 1. I'm here to say, I'm here to express my opposition to this thing you're about to vote on. Here's why. And then give your story. So you really want to practice it a little bit in advance as much as possible. And I think one of the things that's cool about local government, I guess, is that you actually have the ability to do this, and people get really creative when they go speak. Again, I know cannot be in the building right now, so it takes away a little bit of it, but when we're allowed back, like, people wear costumes, people wear certain shirts to identify with how people should vote. It doesn't have to be a boring task. I've been to city council meetings where people sing about what they want, where they do comedy bits about what they want. You can be creative with it and think of different engaging ways to interact with your council members and make your voice be heard on this. And I'm a big proponent of telling people, like, stopping by a city council meeting on a Thursday could just become part of your life if you're so lucky, right? I know traffic and transportation and lives are all difficult to make it happen, but if you live near City Hall, like, just drop on in there for a few minutes on a Thursday. That building is public and it's for you, and you shouldn't be shy about entering it when we're allowed to enter it again safely. It's a public building, and it's a great way to just start to meet the movers and shakers at City Hall, so to speak.
Yeah, and definitely be aware of the time. Unfortunately, with the heated topics on the agenda, frequently you will get either 3 minutes or 1 minute to speak. That happened a bunch this summer, and so that's just something to be aware of, that if you do have like a long, drawn out speech about something, that you probably want to get that to your council member in advance of actually speaking before the council and providing testimony, because you're more likely to have a bit of more impact and more time to actually have a conversation if you talk to your city council member first. The other thing to consider is, some people have more time to speak at city council. What was really great that we saw this summer and throughout COVID is, people helping others to be able to provide testimony at city council. So if you, are a great speaker and might be able to lend your voice to somebody else, or in an organization, a lot of people are looking for assistance in this manner to be able to, have a conversation with city council or provide testimony during those odd hours, or, when you have to kind of wait in a queue for 5 hours during midday.
That's a great point, Jennifer. You can donate your time, is something that can happen at city council meetings. And, if you're just someone who's a civic enthusiast, which I have to assume a lot of you are since you're here at this League of Women Voters event, figuring out how to make city council meetings more engaging and accessible to people, I think, is a big area of growth that we could walk down as a city. There's a lot of opportunity there. Like Jennifer mentioned, it's a great way to get engaged, but it's not accessible to everyone. If you have kids at home and you've got to go home and like feed them dinner and put them to bed, like, you can't show up at a city council meeting at 7 o'clock and wait there for 3 hours, or even be on the phone for that long. And so there's a lot of organizations and individuals who are starting to think about, how can we design this in a better way? How can we help each other so that we can figure out more ways to make City Hall accessible? So that's another great kind of issue area to think about getting involved in if you're interested in just the general how our system works.
Exactly. So at this point in time, I don't have any other reminders. You should check out the League of Women Voters calendar to see what is going on. We've got a lot of great talks planned through our various areas: community relations, diversity, equity, inclusion has book club, and we also have some great talks coming up for our programming and advocacy groups. Do you have anything coming up in the near future, Amy?
I'll just say right now, all election all the time. If you tune into our podcast or follow us on Instagram, we have a guide for all of the propositions, and our podcast, we've got a few out and some are coming before the end of the week. So keep an eye out there. And And then throughout the summer, we're just going to be working on, we have just more civic engagement opportunities, hopefully in-person events again sometime soon. And so, yeah, that's kind of our future path, and just staying on top of the regular weekly news of what's happening in our city. So we'll continue to cover city council meetings and kind of the big issues, including the city budget process, which is going to happen again this summer. And we'll have a lot of information for how people can engage in that.
Got it. So is the Austin Common looking for volunteers?
We always love to have people engage with us. Yeah, I'll put in here my email address. If anyone is interested in volunteering in any capacity, we're always happy to invite the community to participate in our civic engagement activities. And I'll also say, if there's anyone on the call, since we're talking about ways to engage, if you have any questions, or if you've had any issues when you've tried to engage with city council that you want help troubleshooting or anything like that, feel free to drop that into the chat or Q&A, and I'm happy to give any additional tips or advice.
Yeah, same with contacting the league. The league does have a group called Observer Corps, and we do have league members that are dedicated resources to attend city council meetings. We're kind of looking not just for meeting content, but making sure that like the actual rules for city meetings are being adhered to make sure that, there is a quorum, or, making sure that the meeting is being held at a certain time. And so these are things we're looking out for. Hopefully, we can get meetings to be a little more accessible through this process. Well, that's all I had for today. Did anybody else have any additional questions, comments? I am taking suggestions for upcoming 201. So if you have any ideas, feel free to email me. Do not see anything else coming through in the chat. So I will wish you guys a good evening, and we will see you on Zoom sometime soon.
Yes, thank you all for joining and being interested about getting more involved. Like I mentioned, my email address is there. So if something comes up at some point and you are having trouble contacting an elected official or what have you, feel free to send me an email. Happy to help.
Good night.